Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jerry Mack, and I'm with Teachers Retirement. Today, we're coming to you talking to you about return to work legislative updates to our return to work laws. This webinar is an employer webinar. If you're a member, we would appreciate if you would reach out to us directly with your return to work questions or reach out to your employers. But today's webinar is focused on our employers. Sitting in with me today is Jessica Trosclair with our Employer Services Division, and she will be jumping in and sharing some information with us when needed. So let's go ahead and get started with a few friendly reminders. This is all general information meant to be used as a guide. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted tomorrow on our YouTube page. We will send everyone a link to this. So if it's something you want to catch back up on, or you want to share with a colleague that you work with, absolutely no worries, including the handout, including a PDF of this webinar. It will be available as well tomorrow. We will send everyone the link. If you have a question, just type your question into the Q&A, the question and answer box. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. Now, just as a reminder, this is for general information today. Anything very specific is going to have to be researched, gotten back to you. So we would encourage you to reach out to us at asktrsl.org. That's asktrsl.org. And we'll be sharing that site again a little bit later when we start wrapping up. So what are we going to talk about this afternoon? We're going to just do a little refresher on the return to work laws at a glance, an overview of the changes. And we know we've had some groups, our 2010 versus 2020. Let's take a comparison of those two. Some Q&As that we have been receiving at this time so that we know are some hot topics. But that's why these webinars are so helpful, because we keep track of your questions and it helps us build our frequently asked questions and our tools and materials to help you with this. And of course, how to contact TRSL. So let's dive in on return to work laws at a glance. We have three different categories, rather three different buses that are being driven here. We have our first group. Those are the retirees, and this is our 2010 law. Our retirees who retired before July 1, 2020, and have not made a decision that is irrevocable to join the 2020 group, which I'll list in a moment. The headline here is there are new expanded provisions for critical shortage in this specific group, and that's one of the things we'll talk about today. Our 2020 law is twofold. First, for retirees who retired on or after July 1, 2020, thus it's called the 2020 law, and retirees who meet criteria for 2010 group, the one we previously spoke about, but who made an irrevocable election to transfer into the 2020 group. Now, this particular group here in the middle has new provisions for critical shortage. Our last group is our 2022 law. Very important here for those who retired on or before June 30th, 2020, at least 30 years of service, at least age 62, and adjunct in a nursing program where a shortage exists. Now, this last group did not have any changes. How these return to work laws work? They do not prohibit or allow employment. So these are the rules that need to be followed when hiring someone who is a TRSL retiree. It does not prohibit you from hiring someone. It also does not automatically allow this person to be hired. It does specify, however, what may happen to their benefits during reemployment in this position, whether contributions are required. Now, there are several different impacts that may happen. They may have a suspended benefit. There may be an earnings limitation of some type, or there may be no impact to their benefit at all. Now, there is a standard 12-month waiting period to all retirees across the board, and that begins on their date of retirement. So that reemployment is not prohibited, but it means that the retirees cannot receive their benefit if they're reemployed in a TRSL eligible position during that 12-month time frame. Let's take a look at what changes we've had to the return to work laws. Changes involving critical shortage. We've got our 2010 group here in gray. Those again are our members who retired prior to July 1, 2020, now able to work full-time or part-time in critical shortage positions to avoid impacting their benefits. So previously, this critical shortage assessment positions were only for those full-time. So it adds the part-time to this 2010 group. In orange, our 2020 group, those members who retired on or after July 1 of 2020, they are now able to utilize the critical shortage provisions and work full-time or part-time without a suspension or reduction in retirement benefits. Now, something we always like to point out is those reemployed by contract or corporate contract, specifically your staffing agencies, right? They will continue to have their benefits suspended for the duration of their reemployment. That loophole was closed a few years ago. We want to make sure that you're aware of that.
And I just want to throw in that with these changes, there has been no change to the individual positions themselves. So it's still the same classroom teacher, speech therapist, diagnostician, et cetera. And aside from the corporate contract piece or the necessity of being directly employed to utilize this category, 2020 critical shortage is the exact same thing as 2010. So there are no differences between the two aside from needing to be directly employed. Declaration process remains the same and is now applicable for both laws.
Thank you for that clarification, Jessica. We certainly appreciate it. So when we're referring to the term eligible position, what exactly do we mean? Pre-K classroom teacher, educational diagnosticians, interpreters, speech therapists, school social workers, educational transliterators, speech pathologists, school counselors, school psychologists, audiologists, and educators in the deaf of hard of hearing. Now, it's very important to note that the retiree in these eligible positions must be certified in the subject area or specific position in which they will be reemployed. Comparing the laws between 2010 versus 2020, determining the return to work group. So think of this as a little bit of a flow chart, and we are updating our new return to work flow charts and such. You find those handy. I know I like a chart. So think of this like a chart. The first question we're going to ask ourselves is the date of retirement before July 1 of 2020? If no, they're in the 2020 return to work group. If yes, then we move forward to the next question. Does the retiree have previous return to work employment history? If no, 2010 group. If yes, group indicated by last return to work employment type. So the 2010 return to work law group, again, retired before July 1, 2020. This position typically determines the provision and the impact to the retiree's benefit. The 2020 return to work law, those hired on or after July 1 of 2020, the hiring method determines these options. The 2010 return to work provision. So let's take a look again. I love a chart and I love the colors. So it really kind of helps us know what's going on different aspects here with our 2010 group. So under our no impact group, so has no impact or issues receiving their benefit, those eligible, and we're going to go no impact down, and then we'll talk about earnings limit. So we're going to go from left to right. So no impact down, that is our grandfathered group. This is the group that we've heard about, that we've had around for quite some time with us. Our grandfathered group, advanced speech, certain classroom teachers, those core and special leave, and full-time and part-time critical shortage positions. Contribution requirement, yes, and it is refundable upon terminating employment. Our next group under the 2010 return to work provisions are those that are impacted by an earnings limit. 25% of that benefit. That applies to those positions that are substitute classroom teachers, tutors, proctors, nurses, literacy instructors, and presenters of professional development. And yes, they are contributing, but that, of course, is also refundable upon terminating reemployment. Those in the 2010 group who have a suspended benefit. These are all the other positions, including administrative, athletic, clerical, paraprofessional, food services, etc. There is no contribution requirement for this group that has the suspended benefit. And lastly, our critical shortage, no impact, but again, that's after a 12-month waiting period. These eligible positions are those who are full-time and part-time positions. And yes, there is a contribution, but again, refundable upon terminating employment. Similarly, comparing, we're going to take a look at our 2020s. This is where we have the return to work option 1, option 2, and option 3. And just for clarification purposes from a few years ago, to reiterate, this is not the same as the options that a retiree may have retired under, as far as taking a retirement option as far as 1, 2, 2A, 3. I know they're both called options, but just so we know, those are separate categories. So the return to work option 1 group that has an earnings limit, 25% of the FAC, that would be their final average compensation. The eligibility for this provision is available to all part-time and full-time direct employment positions. Yes, they are contributing, and it's refundable upon terminating reemployment. Our return to work option 2 with a suspended benefit, so they're not receiving that retiree payment at that time while they're reemployed. It's available to all full-time direct employment, very important, direct employment positions. And yes, they contribute, but here's the thing. Theirs accrues a supplemental benefit. Very important note here, so that's different. And as a result, a couple of forms are needed. 11 RTW and a DOT are needed to resume. Return to work option 3 is our suspended benefit group. This provision eligibility applies to all employment by contract or corporate contract. So not direct employment here. Contract or corporate contract, no, they are not contributing. They do need a DOT needed to resume. Termination date. Critical shortage, no impact under the 2020 return to work options. This applies to full-time and part-time positions, and those contributions are refundable upon terminating reemployment.
So as you guys probably know, the 2020 return to work law requires the form 15 ELEC. That form is needed for every enrollment that you all submit within the 2020 group. It's also the way in which individuals elect to transfer from Portal A to Portal B. With this 2020 critical shortage, that form is still needed, but they will also require the critical shortage certification form, so the 15 CS. For those individuals, both forms are required. The certification form is going to be the same for both groups. Please keep in mind that the online enrollment is still needed. The election form and the critical shortage form, they're not substitutes for the online enrollment, they're just supplemental. And of course, there is no form at all for the 2010 group aside from the critical shortage certification form. We will have a new critical shortage form as well so that we can update it with some of these new provisions or this new criteria. So if you have any old copies, you might want to toss those and start utilizing the new one that's going to be published July 1.
Thank you, Jessica. We appreciate those details on behalf of the employers. We certainly do need these. Our no impact provisions. So those who retired before July 1, 2010, our grandfathered group, or those who hold an advanced speech degree can be reemployed in any position, any capacity with no impact. Otherwise, the following position-centric categories are available. Under critical shortage, which is now available to the 2020 group, full and part-time classroom teachers in any subject where shortage exists. Full and part-time in these groups here are certified speech therapist, speech pathologist, audiologist, educational diagnostician, etc., those here in our listing. Core subject for the 2010 only. That's our full and part-time directly employed, not contract or corporate contract. Retirees certified in math, science, English language arts, or special education. Now, this does exclude gifted and talented. Special leave in this provision for the 2010 group only. Certified directly employed retirees age 62 and up with 30 or more years of service when filling a teaching vacancy due to maternity, military, extended sick leave, or sabbatical leave. Again, we want to focus that these individuals in this 2020 return to work group must be directly employed in order to utilize the critical shortage category. Continuing with our no impact provisions, we have 3 separate categories with very nuanced differences. Our critical shortage, continuous declaration requirement, and annual certification is required. This position can be filled for an entire year and is applicable for all subjects. All critical shortage enrollments cease on 6/30 of any given fiscal year. So it's continuous, but every year, annual certification must be required. Core subject for 2010 only. There's no declaration process and no forms here, but this is specifically applicable only to math, science, ELA, and special ed positions. This does exclude gifted and talented. This is applicable to full or part-time and substitute positions, and the retiree maintains eligibility only if no non-retired applicants. That means the retiree could be bumped from that position. Now, keep in mind, this expires in July of 2027. Special leave in the 2010 only category, there's also no declaration process and no forms. This is applicable for all subjects, but the retiree must meet required age and service credit criteria, and the vacancy must be due to specific leave scenarios that we have previously listed. This also expires in July of 2027. So how does one declare a critical shortage? Some of you may know this, some of you may need some more information, some of you this might be a bit of a refresh. To declare a critical shortage for your parish, if it's a continuous process, a general statement that you are soliciting applications for future employment of certified teachers must be, first, advertised at least once per month continuously in an official journal. And secondly, posted at a career development office of every post-secondary institute within a 120-mile radius at the beginning of each semester. Additionally, it must be prominently displayed a list of unfilled positions and any position filled with a retiree on the employer's website or the governing authority's website. Now, some of you may need to utilize critical shortage for a specific position. That is an annual process in which the retiree must be certified in the subject area or position, and you must have an applicant pool of fewer than 3.
I'm actually going to clarify that for just a moment because this is slightly different than what we have done in the past. And those of you, because of this 2020 group now getting critical shortage, those of you who have never utilized critical shortage in the past may find that you are now. So Jerry, if you could go us back to the previous slide for us, please. these processes both are required for you to utilize the critical shortage process. The blue continuous process, which Jerry covered and said was specific to you placing your district in a shortage, that is sort of step one, which just opens your district up to using the critical shortage category. And again, it is ongoing and sort of always required. You're not advertising for each individual position. You're sort of advertising for your district. And then the green section is required for every position, and that is what must be looked at on an annual basis. So both are always needed, but one, the blue section, it's one process that covers your entire district, which is, again, different than it used to be. One ad per month covers all of your positions, and it is in your official journal, which is what I call the small town paper. So just keep in mind that being posted in any other type of paper or journal or on your website would not meet that criteria.
Thank you, Jessica. So let's talk a little bit, and we are starting to wrap up a little bit. So have any of those questions that you have coming in for us, again, just general questions, and some of these may need to be researched, but for specific questions, you'll want to reach out to us at askTRSL.org. 2010 versus 2020. So what's different? Our 2010 group here in green, it's position driven versus 2020 group is employment type driven. On 2010 is our grandfathered group with core subject and special leave provisions. 2020, critical shortage is the only no impact category. In our 2010 group, our earnings limit is 25% of annual TRSL benefit. And on 2020, earnings limit is 25% of their annual FAC, our final average compensation, which is different for each member. 2010 has a flat suspension, whereas on 2020, the option 2 suspension accrues service credit. Contract employment is always a flat suspension. That's that contract or corporate contract position.
When we are comparing 2010 and 2020, a question that I often get is, why would someone want to switch from 2010 to 2020? So that's why we kind of show you guys the primary differences between the two laws. And in the past year or two, if you were to have asked me about this, I would have had a little bit of pause in encouraging someone to move from 2010 to 2020 if they were a classroom teacher, especially if they were being employed by you presently in a different position. I always said they need to think about, their future career options or what they want to leave open for themselves, because they might be hurting themselves in the long run. That risk is not as large now that 2020 has a critical shortage category, okay? But please keep in mind, and please make sure that your employees understand, if they move to 2020 to have critical shortage, and then for whatever reason they are employed via contract or corporate contract, specifically staffing agencies or something where they're considered an independent contractor, they're going to have a suspended benefit, whereas 2010, they could have had an earnings limit if they were maybe a substitute teacher or something like that. So definitely a great thing that 2020 has opened up. There's not as much risk with, switching provisions again, but I want to definitely stress that the contract piece is still, in some regards, a risk or a bit of a negative. Want to make sure people understand how that option impacts them. We're starting to get a couple of questions in, so I'm going to go ahead and start answering those. The critical shortage category is here to stay in both 2010 and 2020. It will not sunset in 2027 the way special leave and core subject do, unless there were to be a law change. The way it is written now, both of those provisions will be sticking around in their respective law. The declaration process is here to stay as well. When we're talking about an individual needing to be certified in the subject area in which they are teaching, especially when we're talking about the core subject category where they have to be certified to teach math, science, ELA, or SPED. Your elementary teachers can utilize this category. They hold, even though their certification may say a grade level or a number level, they hold the criteria that is needed per DOE or BESI standards to be considered certified to teach first grade math or second grade science. So as long as they are indeed certified and they are teaching one of those 4 subjects every single day, they are eligible to utilize that category. I cannot tell you whether or not someone is considered certified. That is something that the district has to determine. You would follow whatever the standard criteria is with BESI or DOE. So you guys are telling me that they are indeed considered certified. I do know that something like an OFAT, an out-of-field temporary type license, that is not considered certified. So those exceptional scenarios, or when you're hiring someone that is not certified, but you get to hire them in the position because you don't have anyone else, even though that's allowable on the DOE or BESI side, that does not make them meet the criteria of being certified and eligible for critical shortage, core, or special leave. When someone's employment ends under return to work and their contributions are refundable, they are able to request that refund. They do so via a Form 7A, that's A as in apple. They receive it in one lump sum. The employer, you guys are submitting unsheltered contributions, so they've already been taxed. It's issued right back to the retiree. Now, the employer contributions stay with teachers. Those contributions are not refunded to the agency or to the retiree. Okay, so we're going to give it just a second and see if there are any other questions. And I will clarify that, we talk about a lot, these return to work laws only apply to individuals that are employed in a position that reports to us. They are required, they are mandatory when they're in a position that reports to us. That is similar with the refund. So, an individual cannot be actively employed when they request that refund. They must have separated service. If they separate service with you, but are then reemployed with another local school district, they cannot get their refund. If they're reemployed in the private sector or with someone that does not report to us, at that point, they would be eligible to refund those unsheltered contributions.
We have some information that is current, and we are currently working on updating this, and some of it is updated and some of it will be posted soon. Be sure to check in, and you will see some information coming to you soon on email. We'll do an e-blast with all of our information as soon as we have some more available as well. Of course, you may be familiar with our return to work resources online, our employer manual, specifically Index 15, 15.1, Point 2, and Point 3. And that flow chart, as I indicated earlier, is being revised and is quite helpful. But again, remember, we are here for you. Please reach out to us and contact us. Jessica, thank you so much for being with us today and for helping us answer some questions. This is Jessica's direct contact information. You can also reach out to us at asktrsl.org. And I also want to do a plug for our webinars. We have our employer webinars that have been updated, including our 2024 employer training, which is online. Everyone will be sent the link to that, which will include a recording of today's workshop and the PDF of today's slides, and our member webinars at trsl.org/members/webinars. you will see a listing of all different types of things to refer your members over. Some of you listening are members. And of course, you work with our members, and we appreciate everything you do for our members. So reach out and check out our things that we have on YouTube and on our website. Drop whether someone has 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 90 minutes. We've got different levels of drop for members to hear about, how to apply for retirement, what forms are coming next. We've got some information from Social Security as well. So lots of different things to think about online. And thank y'all so much for being here today. We certainly appreciate it and everything you do for our members. Remember to reach out when you have any questions, and stay safe out there, and also stay hydrated. It is a very hot summer. So y'all take care of yourselves. Have a good one and stay in touch with us. Bye-bye now.